Hey guys, and welcome to another video. Today I'm going to show you the books that I read in November. So November was actually quite a good month. I didn't read as many books, but the page amount definitely increased. But I'm going to go into my reading stats now before I can forget it. So as I said, I read 8 books in November. One was a physical book. I listened to 5 audiobooks and I read 2 graphic novels or manga. The total amount of pages was 3,075 and I read 712 pages of that physically. The average amount of pages is therefore 384, but for my physical books it was 237. My average rating was 3.81 and I only bought 5 books, which I'm really proud of. However, my TBR slightly increased. I have now 199 books on my TBR and 112 books that I could start immediately. But now let's get into the books that I read. Oh, and I read every book from my TBR except for one book. I did not get to These Violent Delights, but I switched that out for another book that I'm going to show you in a minute. But yeah, I'm really happy that I completed my TBR. So my prompt for this book was a sister pick, and my sister picked Truly Devious by Maureen Johnson. This is quite well known, I feel like. So basically this is a crime novel and we are following a character called Stevie, and she goes to Ellingham Academy, and that's basically like a school for really gifted children, and she's there because she wants to solve this case that occurred right in the founding days, I guess, of the school, like I think in the 1930s, where the daughter of the founder got kidnapped, and she's basically trying to solve that case. But also a couple of other things occur in this book, and yeah, that's basically the plot. So I ended up giving this one 3.5 stars. I did enjoy it. However, you know, it was the first book that I read in November, so my memory is quite blurry already, so that's usually not a good sign. But it could also be because I listened to the audiobook, and also, you know, this is a series, so nothing's really resolved in the end. There is a little reveal in the end, which is quite shocking actually. However, it was just revealed and then the book was over. We didn't get any explanation. It was just like out of the blue. And yeah, you really have to read the next book. And I wanted to do that anyway, so it's fine. But I don't know. I just don't like when nothing really gets revealed in like the first books of the series, especially if it's a crime novel. So yeah, I only gave this one 3.5 stars, but I feel like the series is so well loved, so I'm really hoping that the later books are going to convince me a little bit more. And then I listened to another audiobook, and I used that one to switch it out for These Violent Delights. The prompt was just to read any book, so it was fine. I listened to Quality Land 2.0, and that is a German book. It is a comedy book, and it is basically set in the near future, and it's kind of satire. It's really funny. I don't want to talk about it too much because I don't think the translation is as good. But if you are able to read in German, I definitely would recommend the first one. I don't really think that the second book was really necessary. It was definitely enjoyable, but just not as good as the first one. I gave the first one 5 out of 5 stars, and this one I gave 4 stars. It's just, I don't know, not as good, but I'm a really big fan of the first book, so yeah, I had to read the second one, but you could just read the first one and be good. And then I listened to the biggest book on my TBR for this month, and that was Queen of Shadows by Sarah J. Maas. This is the 4th book in the series, and when I listened to it, I really enjoyed it, but to be quite honest, I'd have to think again to remember really what happened. Okay, so there was a plot twist in this that I did not see coming. I did not expect this at all. So that was really good. And then the ending was also really cool. But oh, I don't think listening to the audiobook is like the way to go for the series. But you know, I don't really care about the series, but I just want to get it read just to know what it's about. Yeah, I know. But I did enjoy it. I gave it 4 to 5 stars. Like, I remember the key events and it was quite enjoyable. So I'm just going to continue on with the series and hopefully I'll finish it in 2021. Well, I think I could say it's like a good time listening to this audiobook, but that's it, you know, we can move on. Yeah. And then I listened to my only 5-star read of November, and that was My Dark Vanessa by K. Elizabeth Russell. And you've probably heard of this one too. This is following Vanessa, and she had a teacher-student relationship when she was a teenager. It starts, I think, when she was 15, and then it goes on until her later years. This was really hard to read about, actually, because it just felt so real. I don't know if the author wrote that from her own experience, but it was so believable, and just the way it was written, so honest. But basically we also follow her in her 30s, I believe. The teacher actually is facing like accusations of other sexual harassments, and she is kind of dealing with that because she doesn't really feel like it has been sexual harassment. She's kind of blaming it on herself. It's just really hard to read about, but at the same time, because it was so honest and it was just so gripping, I had to give it 5 stars. It's a really hard book to read, but it's definitely worth it, so I'd recommend it to anyone who wants to read about this kind of issue. And then I read Saga Volume 9, so that means I now finished the graphic novel series, and I think there's more to come, but that's what's out for now. And yeah, well, I think this was the weakest volume. This was the only volume that I gave 3 stars, but I feel like if I reread some of the earlier volumes, I would have given them 3 stars maybe, because I gave most of them 4 stars. It was just not really gripping at all. You're just following all these kinds of perspectives, and I don't know, it gets a little confusing for me at times, just because it's just like a jump to another perspective most of the time. So I did give it 3 to 5 stars, but the ending was so shocking. I didn't expect this at all, so I need to read the next volume to find out what happens, but I'm not sure when it's coming out. I'm really glad that I got through this whole series like almost in a year. Yeah, I think I read the first volume last year in December or in November, I think. So exactly a year. Oh, I didn't say the prompts for my TBR for each of the books, but Queen of Shadows was just a big book, and then My Dark Vanessa was what my mother picked. Saga was a short book. And now we have Out of Comfort Zone, and for that I chose a classic. Der Besuch der alten Dame by Friedrich Dürrenmatt. It is The Visit in the translation. So we are following a small town, and it is really poor, and everyone who lives there desperately needs money. Everything is super old, the buildings and all that, and yeah, they're just basically very, very poor. But then this one lady, Claire Zachanassian, decides to visit this town, and she is a very rich lady, and she actually is from that town, but she married a very rich Armenian man, and now she is a billionaire, and she is willing to give the town a billion insert currency. It's not stated in the book. However, she wants one of these people dead because there was this one guy that really betrayed her in her youth, and that's why she had to leave the town, and she wants the other town members to kill him. It's basically about them deciding if they're going to do it or not. So it was really cool, very strange. It is very grotesque. I really enjoyed this actually. In the beginning I wrote like something on every page. I was like analyzing it like I was in school, but then when we got to the halfway point I just couldn't do it anymore, and I read some interpretations of it, and it's actually like pretty cool. But yeah, at the end of the day I gave this 4 to 5 stars. You know, not my absolute favorite book, but it's definitely very good. So yeah. And then I did not expect to read another book, but I picked up the audiobook for Daughter of Smoke and Bone by Laini Taylor, like I think 3 days before the end of November. And I listened to this audiobook because there's actually a read-along hosted by a couple of people for the series. And yeah, the live show is on Saturday. I'm really excited to join it. And it is actually a reread for me, but I didn't remember too much of it. I think I listened to it like 2 years ago maybe. It really helped me because I was listening to the audiobook to write down like the characters and, you know, what they did, who they are, because when I first listened to it, it was super confusing with all these kinds of names. So I really now know what is going on, and that really enhanced my reading experience. So yeah, I bumped my rating up to a 4 to 5 stars. It originally was a 3.75 stars, but I'm really excited to now also read the second book in December. And I actually read that one too, but only like 75% maybe, because I was just listening and I didn't know what was going on, so I just stopped it. You know, I couldn't even force my way through the book because there was just no point. I'm really excited to see how I like the second one because I really don't remember too much of it. I just know that it's more set in this kind of fantasy world other than you know, Prague and overworld, so to say. And yeah, I'm really happy that I picked it up, especially because I also ordered the Illumicrate special editions, so I need to read them anyway at some point. So, and then lastly, for one word title, I picked Gyo by Junji Ito, and you probably know this manga from Books with Chloe. She really is a big fan of his horror mangas, and I have to say this edition is so cool. It's the deluxe edition. It is really heavy and really good quality. So this is basically about fish, but also about other things. Like, it's really disturbing. It's basically like walking fish who are smelling of a human corpse. It's really disgusting. The pictures are, I think I can show you like a little bit of it, so if you don't want to see it, just skip this part. So this is, for example, one of the fish. It's really disgusting, but it gradually gets worse actually, because other creatures can stand on these kinds of legs too. So we have like sharks, we have people, which is the worst thing. It is disgusting. I did really enjoy the art style. He's very gifted at that, but the plot was just kind of a little all over the place, and I don't know, I just didn't like the plot as much. So I ended up giving this one 3 out of 5 stars. It might just not be my kind of style, but I'm definitely going to try and read Uzumaki, because I feel like that's most people's favorite. But yeah, these are all of the books that I read in November. Please comment down below if you've read any of these books that I read, or what your favorite book of November was. And I really hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please don't forget to subscribe and give this video a thumbs up, and I'll see you in my next one. Goodbye, guys.